From PBS NewsHour Student Reporting Labs
and WETA,
this is On Our Minds
with Bree
and James,
a podcast made by teens for teens.
Because everyone deserves a place to feel heard. Hey Bree.
Hey James. Oh my gosh, it's the last episode of season 4. Our last episode as hosts.
Oh my gosh. Where did all that time go? It seems like just yesterday we met up in Seattle to record our very first episode.
Don't remind me, it's getting too real. It's too sad. But yeah, I mean, change happens all the time, just like us graduating and, growing up in general. But what's next for you, James? Are you still interested in the military?
Yeah, I definitely am. So this fall, I'm going to be at Yale as an economics major. There, I'm going to be doing like ROTC. So I could like commission as a second lieutenant in the Army. So yeah, like honestly, it just doesn't feel quite right that I'm no longer going to be a high schooler anymore. Like I think that's like the craziest thing. I'm sure you're like feeling like the same way probably, but I'm also curious to hear, Bree, what's your next chapter in your life?
Yeah, definitely going to college abroad in Spain. I'm going to still be pursuing media and art, humanities, and stuff like that.
I just like know for a fact that you're going to enjoy it so much. Like I am so jealous. How did you like end up deciding to go to like college abroad, and why Spain specifically?
I attended a trip to Spain in middle school and it really opened my eyes. I realized that there was a whole other world besides New York City or the United States. So I thought, what better time to go when I'm a student and I can explore, be with friends, and really make the most out of these 4 years.
I think you and I are really similar in that we love learning about new cultures and languages. And for me, it stems from the fact that I've had the opportunity to live in other countries. And other countries and international issues are actually what we'll be talking about in today's episode.
First, we are joined by a researcher and fact-checker, Simran. Hey Simran, welcome back.
Hi Bree, hi James.
Hey Simran, thanks for being here today. So recently, I was just having a conversation with a few of my friends that live abroad, and they were just kind of joking around and saying that they had this idea that Americans actually don't really understand geography at all. That was really, really funny to me. So that brings me to my question. How much do Americans, specifically teens, know about the world around them?
Well, I was actually reading about this in a study from 2019. And in that study, American adults were asked questions about things like geography and current events. And unfortunately, they only answered about half of the questions correctly, which obviously isn't great. For teens specifically, though, the rise of social media has increased civic engagement and awareness of the idea that there are serious international issues taking place in many different countries.
I definitely see that with my social media feed. I feel as though there's more and more news and coverage about things that are happening all around the world. It's making me feel more plugged in and connected than ever. But I'm also wondering, how does teen mental health differ in other countries? Are teens happier in other countries?
So what's unfortunate is that life satisfaction and self-ratings for teens have been going down across the globe. Some of this can be attributed to COVID-19, but that's really a trend that dates back at least a decade. There's actually a test called the Mental Health Quotient Assessment, and according to a recent study, the highest mental well-being was largely in Spanish-speaking Latin America, although Tanzania topped the list. And at the bottom of that list was the United Kingdom, South Africa, and Brazil. The United States was actually in the lower third of that list.
That is actually so fascinating, especially as someone who grew up both like in the US and, in Latin America. Do we actually know why some countries are doing better than others?
Well, the report acknowledges that there are a range of factors, but a big one is the global deterioration of relationships across generations. That means that a young person is less likely to have good family relationships and friendships than their parents or grandparents have had. It's possible that in the countries doing the best mental health-wise, that they have the strongest social connections.
That's really interesting, though, that it is a global phenomenon and not just happening in the US. For some reason, I thought that it was kind of only happening in the US. Just as the US Surgeon General told us, the lack of strong relationships really affects physical as well as mental health.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, Simran, thanks for digging into the data.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Now let's hear from some student reporters. First, we'll be traveling all the way to Senegal, which is the westernmost country in Africa. To give you a taste of the culture, this music that you're hearing now is by a famous Senegalese musician named Youssou N'Dour. This song, called 7 Seconds, is a big international hit.
Yeah, last school year, Alexia, who's from St. Louis, Missouri, got the chance to live abroad in Dakar, Senegal. During that time, she recorded her fellow American foreign exchange students talking about their experiences. Here's Alexia.
During the 2022 to 2023 school year, I had the honor to be selected for the U.S. Department of State's Kennedy Lugar Yes Abroad program, which allowed me to live and learn in Senegal's capital city of Dakar in West Africa for nearly a year. While I was convinced, even prior to my departure to Senegal, that study abroad provides eye-opening experiences, the process of living in another country and immersing myself in the culture of the place was so much more than I expected. I interviewed 3 of my peers in the cohort of the program, asking them to reflect on their study abroad journeys.
Hi, I'm Gabby Haddad, and I'm 16 years old. I'm from Indianapolis, Indiana, and I'm living here in Dakar.
Hi, I'm Yen Ly, and I'm currently spending my gap year in Dakar, Senegal. So I'll be living here for 10 months with a local Senegalese host family. And I'm going to KUOW, which is a local high school here.
My name is Evan. I'm originally from Buffalo, New York, and I'm staying for 10 months in Dakar, Senegal.
Personally, for me, like coming abroad, I really expected it to be a lot about learning about new cultures, and I was really excited to focus on the language. I definitely think it's helped me a lot to be more outgoing and more confident and just take bigger leaps.
Here, you spend all your time immersed in a completely different culture and a different language. In Dakar, they speak mostly French and Wolof. I'm not fluent in either of those languages. I've learned to be more okay with that and more comfortable with that. Sometimes the smallest moments are the ones that mean the most. I think like the 5 months so far have been a collection of both really big and a lot of really small moments that are just amazing.
The people that I have met have truly made my experience amazing. So going to a local high school here, and truly every day I do look forward to going to school just because the people in my class are so incredible and so hilarious.
We have been able to take trips outside of the city and really just get a view on everyday life in Senegal. And I think one of the best parts about that was coming back home afterwards and just being able to feel at home with my host family. For me, I think a big challenge of living abroad is it's a little bit lonely because you're starting brand new. I've had a lot of friends, but it's hard sometimes not feeling as close to everyone.
Exchange students have to deal with a lot of homesickness, and I'm very close to my family, so that's definitely been hard. It's gotten a lot better. I think that it's just a natural part of studying abroad and you learn how to cope with it. My favorite thing to do is put on headphones and blast Taylor Swift and dance in the bathroom. And I think it's a blast and it makes me feel better.
Often U.S. teens can be just a little bit closed-minded about the rest of the world. Studying abroad is just really useful to see other cultures with a realistic view without what we see in movies and stuff, and just to get a real perspective that's different from what we might learn in school.
I think the biggest thing is that when you're young, you are so free to do whatever you want. Truly, just because you can and you're so free to do it, why not? Why not take that opportunity to say yes to something new? Because in the end, you absolutely will not regret it.
Exchange is really amazing. It is the best decision I've ever made to come here to Senegal and live a year here. But it can be hard sometimes, and so just know that it's going to be great. And on the days where you're down, it's okay. It'll get better. Go blast some music, and it'll be the best experience of your life.
So I definitely resonate to what everyone was saying. When it comes to living abroad, I'm super excited about just the whole new experience of living somewhere else. But I'm definitely also nervous about feeling homesick, missing my family, and definitely the language barrier because I know they speak Spanish super fast and I'm still a beginner, but we're gonna see what happens.
Yeah, no, I definitely get that. But knowing you, I'm sure you'll be able to adjust living abroad really well. I remember actually having to do the same whenever I had to live in South America or Korea when I was younger. On top of overcoming that language barrier, there was just so many small cultural nuances that I had to get used to.
I'm with you there. I'm super interested about learning different cultures and just knowing about what goes on in various parts of the world. And with the help of social media, podcasts, and broadcasts, I get a lot of my news from those platforms.
Well, speaking of the news, I've actually made it a new goal of mine to keep myself updated with what's going on both domestically and internationally. For instance, I'm trying to learn all about the Israel Hamas conflict, which is just really complicated.
Yeah, definitely. I have friends on both sides. I have Jewish friends who have Israeli family members, but I also have Palestinian friends. And I've been trying to keep myself up to date and educated on what's going on.
Well, that's exactly what student reporter Miriam Reichenberg explored. She's from Berkeley High School in Berkeley, California, and she interviewed students and teachers at her school last semester about the Israel Hamas conflict and what, if anything, should be taught in school. Let's take a listen.
On the Monday after October 7th, when Hamas launched a series of attacks in Israel, I returned to Berkeley High School in Berkeley, California, a diverse public school of over 3,300 students, feeling overwhelmed, confused, and unsure of how to process the events that would lead to what is now the Israel-Hamas war.
Tonight on PBS News Weekend, death and destruction in the Middle East as Hamas launches a surprise assault on Israel.
Over that weekend, my peers and I had been bombarded by horrific stories and photos, mostly on social media and online, as events unfolded. Ariel Kahat, a Berkeley High junior born in Israel, immediately reached out to his family.
I remember actually calling my grandma the day after, who lives in Israel, and just hearing the fear in her voice made me really scared.
Senior Mohammed Delgado, an active member of Berkeley High's Muslim Association, remembers the fear he felt.
So I was just watching, and obviously, as always, I was concerned that more people were going to have to die, that more people were going to be killed.
As a way to process coming retaliatory attacks on Gaza, Mohammed and other students organized a school walkout in support of the Palestinian people the week following October 7th. In the hallways and in my classrooms that first day, and for a few weeks that followed, I saw kids pulling out their phones, checking the news, and heard them talking about what was happening. Information was confusing and chaotic and ever-changing. My Instagram feed was filling up with hastily reposted infographics and viewpoints. My friend, Israeli-American junior Ori Bizaglo, felt overwhelmed.
I felt terrible because it felt like everybody had their own opinion about this that they'd never formed before, and suddenly everyone was an expert. It was just so surreal to have something so close to home suddenly amplified on such an intense level.
For the first few weeks, friends did check in with each other, especially on those with Israeli or Palestinian family members. As someone who has cousins in Israel, I knew how important it was to ask my friends with ties to the region how they were holding up. Many teachers, though, were questioning how or if to bring up the conflict in their classrooms with students. Most of my teachers acknowledged what was happening and told us we'd get around to discussing the issue once they had a chance to educate themselves. Here's my history teacher, Peter Rodriguez.
You don't want to open a can of worms without doing due diligence, and I've been teaching long enough to have made that mistake before. The sort of consideration is, am I knowledgeable enough to facilitate that discussion well? And then also, are we so close to it in terms of time that can I manage the emotions of it well? And those are two separate. Sometimes I would say I have enough knowledge, but the emotions are going to be too raw. Sometimes I don't have enough knowledge, but everyone in the room is emotionally ready.
Mohammed's history teacher chose to present her class with some primary sources and documents as a way to educate her students, and he thought this was a productive and respectful way to address the conflict.
We had the Balfour Declaration,
which was a 1917 statement issued by the British government announcing its support for the establishment of Israel.
These were primary sources. These weren't just, the teacher's PowerPoint. We could come up with our own thoughts. We were given the different perspectives from people who might have been for the establishment of Israel, or people who were more concerned about what was going to happen to the residents of Palestine. And so I think that's the best way to go about it is to give us these resources.
But as time went on, I noticed fewer check-ins and teachers weren't bringing discussions into the classrooms. And it struck me, are we not going to talk about this at all? On some level, that feels strange to me. Here's this huge world event that's impacting many people I know.
That's just the way that a lot of people are. If the issue isn't really right in front of them, then they move on.
I get it. There's a full-blown war and a humanitarian crisis in Gaza, and it's very uncomfortable and brings up so much raw emotion and judgment. Again, here's Ariel, the student born in Israel.
When Israel kind of started attacking back, there was a pretty big shift in the way people viewed it. All of the empathy kind of turned into judgment. In school, I honestly have almost avoided the issue because it's a bit uncomfortable to talk about.
Here's how my Israeli-American classmate Ori put it.
I think that the fact that we haven't talked about it sort of shows how intense it is, because Berkeley High is such a place of let's talk about it, let's figure it out, let's see how we feel. This is my personal life, my personal history, and then it's all just being explained in a way that doesn't feel right. So I don't need this to be a part of school. I try to escape at school. I don't want to have that be a part of my school life. If we were to talk about this, it needs to be done so well. It needs to be done in a way that is no one feels uncomfortable, or if they do, there's a place for that and an acknowledgement that we're not all the same. We all come from different things, different opinions.
Mr. Rodriguez added that the reality is that there's so much in the news that affects us all.
It's a constant barrage of events that feel significant to my student population. I mean, I have been teaching in an age where, for instance, shootings are not uncommon and feel very personal, I think, to a lot of my students. The war in Ukraine also comes to mind as sort of an event that felt like it was going to be significant historically and significant to our student populations, maybe more so with this one because of our school demographics.
As teens, we have so much on our minds, and my peers and I are growing up in such a tumultuous time. Political activism, educated discussions, and voicing of opinions have their place, for sure, but maybe it's okay for us not to have to constantly talk about what's happening right now in the world at school. Maybe tolerance and empathy for each other are enough. Maybe the silence I've been feeling uncomfortable with is actually an understandable response, as we give ourselves time and space to process and talk in smaller groups and within our families.
During the time since Miriam produced that piece, a lot has been happening here in the States, particularly on college campuses with student protests.
Yeah, it's intense. There have been a lot of arrests. It's kind of scary. During times like these, it's more important than ever that young people get a platform to share what they are experiencing.
You know, that's why I'm really glad I took on this project to co-host this year's season of On Our Minds. One of my greatest hopes for the program going into the show was that, hopefully, On Our Minds would give our listeners hope and also a chance to learn about other teens. In doing so, I think we can really foster a lot of understanding and even learn something new about ourselves.
It genuinely changed my life for the better. It definitely helped me grow as a person. I feel a lot more confident speaking and voicing my opinion, because that is what On Our Minds is. It's a platform for student voices and for students to share stories about their perspectives about various things. But before we sign off, we have some exciting news. Coming this fall, there will be a special edition of On Our Minds, all about the election.
That's right. High schoolers from the student advisory team at Student Reporting Labs pitched the idea for an election-related podcast season, and SRL said, let's do it.
Episode topics will include election misinformation, America's youngest candidates, the reason we have an electoral college, and how young people's perception of America is changing.
Ironically enough, as a speech and debate kid, I was never too involved in politics, but I'm really excited for this podcast now, since it's fully geared towards our generation.
100%. I am so excited to tune in. But are you ready? It'll be our last time doing the credits.
Well, let's do it.
On Our Minds Season 4 is produced by Student Reporting Labs in collaboration with KUOW's Radioactive Youth Media.
Today's segments were produced by Alexia and Nastasia from St. Louis, Missouri.
And Miriam Reichenberg from Berkeley, California.
This episode was produced by lead podcast producer Briget Ganske and associate producer Jaylah Moore Ross with research and fact-checking by Simran Gupta.
Alayna Ly edited and mixed this episode. Approval and oversight by editorial director Marie Kusik and executive producer Leah Clapman.
Theme music by Joseph Broad. Additional music from Blue Dot Sessions.
If you or someone you know needs help, we have a list of resources at studentreportinglabs.org/mental health resources.
Yeah, I thought we were gonna do this for the rest of our lives. What is going on?
I thought I was gonna be old and gray and still be this is On Our Minds.
Podcast BFFs forever.
Podcast BFFs forever, absolutely.